Welcome. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I recently read the CCP, so the Chinese Communist Party's 15th five-year plan, which is covering the period between 2026 and 2030, so the upcoming 5 years. They put out this document to align the society and the CCP members and the Chinese elite towards their goals for the next 5 years. Now, I thought it would be interesting to read the document and share my thoughts and reflections, but after I read it the first time, I was so shocked by how difficult this document was to get through. Like, it felt like it was fighting my brain every step of the way. Like, something about the way the CCP's communication style was so foreign to me. So I decided to make a reading guide, primarily aimed at Western audiences. I think they would benefit the most, but obviously open to everyone. This is the reading guide that I wish I had when I first started. So if you're new to sort of Chinese political thought, maybe CCP's outputs, this might be of interest to you. So let's get started. I will talk first about the document in general a little bit and why I found it so difficult. And then I have 5 pointers and a couple of examples. So you can see like the overall structure on my iPad here, and we're going to work through it together. I have 5 pointers with like work through examples, a couple of examples. So that I hope this will be beneficial to whomever is interested. So let's get started. Let me increase the first one. Okay, so why do we need a guide? Okay, a little bit of the structure. This document is the 15th five-year plan, although I looked into a couple of the ones previously and they're almost exactly the same. So this one is 67 pages if you export it to PDF. It's all text, first of all. It's all text. It consists of 15 sections with 61 points, roughly like 4 points per section, and 2 to 3 paragraphs per point. That's the way it's structured. So as mentioned, there are no photos, there are no charts, no figures, no numbers. Like, it's fine to have a paragraph text, but you would think there are a bunch of numbers in that paragraph. There are none. Furthermore, things that make it even more difficult for my mind, there were no examples and no narrative. So what I mean by examples and narrative, I mean, since there's so little like quantified information, I was thinking of like at least a very strong narrative. Like, we have 3 objectives, and to accomplish the first objectives, we have 4 interim objectives or something. Like, I was expecting that kind of a structure, and that structure does not exist either. When I cross out narrative, it's a little bit, you'll see in a couple of the examples, but like there is a narrative, but not in the way you expect. So it needs to be deciphered. You need to like dig for it. And I'm gonna give you a couple of pointers for that. Okay, so my first pointer is to remove the noise. So you can see here in this, I put a little diagram with white noise, and I put the same message in both. The CCP's focus. You need to remove the white noise that exists in the document to be able to hear and see the CCP's actual focus a little bit better. So specifically what I mean by white noise in this case is, imagine if you were planning the next 5 years for any generic country. Doesn't matter which one. Like, pick anyone, I think in the top 50 GDP, and then have like ChatGPT write for it a generic 5-year plan. All of that stuff that ChatGPT would come up with exists in this document too. So this document covers everything from like literature, art, heavy industry, economy, financials, like everything under the sun, everything above the sun, below the sun, everything is in this document. And primarily, I think that's just since it has such a broad audience in the Chinese society, I think they want to make sure nobody is left out, sort of. So everybody is covered. But then like some people are, there's a message, like other things are emphasized in different ways. So you just need to tease those out. But in order to be able to figure that out, an important piece is just to remove the generic kind of language, remove that from your reading, or don't pay so much attention to it, in my opinion. Another thing is like, so this is a bonus here. There are also interesting silences. Like, the things that, for example, if you came up with a ChatGPT, they would mention specifically things around demography, but a couple other things I think are sorely missing. Like ethnic minorities, I think are mentioned only 2 times in the entire document. That's like an interesting, for example, thing that they did not focus on. So there's a message in the thing they did not focus on, but you also need to be able to identify that as well. So I showed that with this like white noise. The parts of the white noise, it's actually no noise. It's pure silence, and the silence has its own interpretation as well. All right, so that was the first. Now, the second, let me see if I can put this. Okay, the second is decoding quantifiers. So it's kind of like this, the 15th five-year plan, this document, feels a little bit like a worksheet. And I'll tell you how. So I came up with this particular example, which had straight back-to-back 2 quantified kind of references. Let's take a look. Let's read the first one. So we should see, this is part of one of their major objectives, we should see that the economy keeps growing within an appropriate range, realize steady gains in total factor productivity, and achieve a notable increase in household consumption as a share of GDP. So now there are no numbers here. You don't really know what they mean by each of these kind of objectives. But one way to decipher them is if you look at keeps growing within an appropriate range. Like, I interpret this as, it should be above 0. But like, you can justify a wide range as long as it's above 0. What's an appropriate range? I mean, you can look at the previous historical ones, and if you grow a little bit, even if you grow potentially less than what you've grown before, it might be an appropriate range if like the whole world is growing less or something. That's like, there's a lot of wiggle room here to justify any numbers as long as it's above 0. So we do know it should be growing at least. It should not be shrinking. But for example, then compare the first one to the next one. So it said the goal is to achieve a notable increase in household in household consumption as a share of GDP. So my understanding here is that this is different from like appropriate level of growth. So for example, I made a little chart here. Like oops, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so if, for example, in the past couple of 5-year cycles, let's say the household consumption, sorry, let me actually make a better point here. So the household consumption grew sort of like this. Okay, for the next 5 years, I believe that if it grows this much, this will not be acceptable. This is a mere continuation. I believe what they're expecting is something like this. So that's what I interpret a notable increase to be, and that's why it's sort of a worksheet. Like you have to work out yourself what might be an appropriate range or an acceptable range in either case. But anyway, that is point number 2. So the quantifiers have to be decoded. Now, the third one is, the third pointer I have is to listen to the repetitions for an overall way of doing things. And let me tell you, we're going to see it together in this example, they are not subtle about that. Like when they're repeating something, when they want to get a message through repetition, they will hammer you over the head with it. So it's not subtle at all. Let's look here. So do not take a shot every time they write coordinated because you will die of a coma instantly. So this is one of the 15 sections. This is section number 9, refining the regional economic layout and promoting coordinated regional development. Coordinated regional development is important, etc., etc. For we should give full play to the synergies. I won't read the whole thing. Urbanization. Part of it is also like the complementary strengths. So we should know what every region is doing. Another, coordinated regional development. We should promote coordinated development. Yeah, there's just like, when they want to emphasize something like this, they will hammer it over and over again. So a couple of the words to look out for, in my opinion, are this like coordinated, integrated, synergy, holistic. That sort of thing comes up over and over again, not just in one section, but in every section starting from the first. So they very much, I think, like the CCP, I'll mention this in my video where I share my actual reflections and analysis, but like it's so clear. They want, even if it's good results, if you got these good results without talking to anyone or without kind of letting other people in your environment know, they will not look favorably upon that. Like they want everybody to be talking to each other, like whatever level you're in, they want you to be communicating with your managers, with your reports, with laterally, with the similar people in other industries. So they're very much emphasizing acting together. And you will see that. When they want to tell you that, they will tell you through repetition after repetition. Other repeated words are, for example, proactive and 1,000 like similar, but mostly the word proactive and similar synonyms. The other words to look out for are layouts. So they care a lot about the physical proximity of industries or other kind of organizations that make sense to be physically close together. So they're constantly talking about optimizing layouts, whether that's energy, water, or actual like factories and industrial clusters. For example, they also mention a lot about breakthroughs, specifically in particular science and technology fields. And again, when they want a certain number of like technological advances to be made in particular sectors, they repeat breakthrough over and over again. So definitely, I would say my third pointer is to listen to the repetitions. Now, this one was interesting. My fourth point is listen to the oddly specific. So I think the easiest way is to illustrate, and you'll see what I mean. So let's read this first paragraph. Yes, we should refine the mechanisms for diverse forms of ecological compensation and broaden the channels for realizing the market value of ecosystem goods and services based on local conditions. We should step up the ecological conservation and systematic governance of important rivers, lakes, and reservoirs. So far, like it's this very generic kind of we should care about the environment, etc. Now look at the next sentence. We should continue to effectively enforce the 10-year fishing ban on the Yangtze River. Like all of a sudden, a specific river, a specific time period of fishing ban, the extra emphasis on like effectively enforced. This is like extremely specific. So compared to especially what followed before, this is the kind of stuff that I think shows the CCP's focus in several areas. Like the things before you have wiggle room, you do not have wiggle room on this, the Yangtze River fishing ban. Couple other things here. So for example, let's read this next one. Let me see if I can, yeah. Capacity building on national security should be bolstered in emerging domains, including cyberspace, data, AI, biology, ecology, nuclear energy, outer space, deep sea, the polar regions, and low altitude airspace. Like some of these things are not like the other things. Low altitude airspace, polar regions, that's a lot more specific than like biology and ecology. So that specificity I think I found very interesting, and it's something to be on the lookout for. One more thing, so one more example. We need to further develop our integrated system and capacity for maintaining law and order. We should ensure that responsibility for protecting social stability is fulfilled, encourage broader public participation in crime prevention and control, build robust mechanisms for combating and rooting out organized crime on an ongoing basis, and redouble efforts to prevent and crack down on telecom and online fraud and drug-related crime. Like, again, we went from like very generic to quite specific, especially with the additionally emphasizing language of like prevent, crack down, telecom and online and drug-related crime. So there's a lot, like we should do crime prevention in general, but specifically these three, they want to see results. So yes, that's my fourth tip. And now to the fifth tip. It's interesting. Most of this document is, we should do this, we should improve on that, we should go there. But then occasionally you see quite harsh language and warning to specific groups or types of people. And I thought those were interesting. Those were also like sort of communicating their red lines, both internationally and domestically. We'll see some examples of that. So we should support the global south in building strength through unity, step up aid to other countries, and provide the world with more public goods. We must resolutely oppose all hegemonic, high-handed, and bullying acts, defend international fairness and justice, and safeguard the common interest of all people around the world. Like I thought like everything else might be very, more generic, and then like the resolutely oppose hegemonic bullying. Right? Like the language instantly for a minute there, for a sentence, changes, the severity changes, and then like it comes back down again, and literally we're talking about peace and universal security again. So I think those are the ways that they have a more subtle way of communicating, whereas like this kind of thing in I think a Western government's document would have like its own section, it would be in red and underlined, like it would just be a lot more emphasized. Here it's more subtle, but it still exists. Now, I love this part. The right approach must be followed in selecting and appointing officials with political commitment as a primary criterion. We should make sure that officials have a correct understanding of what it means to perform well and act accordingly, and improve the system for assessing their performance. Now, look, those who are no longer fit for their posts should be replaced, and ongoing efforts must be made to ensure that officials can be demoted as well as promoted. Like, all of a sudden the severity changes, and afterwards, this is a longer paragraph, but then afterwards they're talking about training the officials again. But like, this is a clear warning. You can go up as well as down. You can be replaced. There is an exit door. It's not, the CCP is not one way in and then like you're good for life. So very interesting the way the warnings just pop up inside paragraphs. And then this one was also like, I think this was a paragraph following the one before, but I'll say like the first part is, we should implement this, do that. Now look at the last part. The fight against corruption is always ongoing and requires us to maintain sober-minded and steadfast. We must take coordinated steps to ensure that officials do not have the audacity, opportunity, or desire to commit corruption, and see that we have the resolve to keep waging this this tough, protracted, and all-out battle. We must also work to develop a political atmosphere of integrity. Like the amplitude, I mean, if you can like detect that the amplitude within the same paragraph with the same kind of visually the same font and everything, there's no other external pieces of emphasis, but it is a marked change within the same paragraphs. So this is my fifth and final pointer to listen to the warnings. And I think if you can do all five, I think it would have helped me in my first time reading the 5-year plan. I think I'm much more accustomed to the language and structure and way it communicates now. So I've read it several times over and I've taken notes. And at some point in the future, I'm going to make a video on like the substantial content of it and what my reactions are. I hope you enjoyed this reader's guide to the CCP's 15th 5-year plan or any 5-year plan. Thank you very much. Goodbye.